people. We're back, finally. What we're back from? Well, I guess I should say we're back to, because, you guys got a little taste of what our future studio is going to look like. So, unfortunately, we're sad that we couldn't continue to give you guys more of an experience from there. But don't worry, people. It is a work in progress, and we'll be in there when we can.
Before they know it.
You're right, because these things take time. So, I guess the first thing I should say is happy August. We're now in, the 6th month of quarantine? Whatever the hell we're still in. Like, wow. I didn't quite know how 2020 was going to be, but for it to kick off what hopefully will not be an entire decade of misery and despair, I don't know, dude. But hey,
man, you gotta have hope.
But that's what we're here to talk. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're the fun podcast. We're the turn your brain off and have fun podcast. We're the Talkin TV podcast, as that logo says. One of these days, I will figure out these goddamn camera directions on StreamYard. But people, once again, I'm the movie nerd. That's the TV nerd. And if you're wondering why I'm wearing a shirt with a shark logo, a shark resting in a coconut bowl, I thought it would be a pretty good representation for where I was this past weekend. And why just everything seemed to be dead for my end is because I was having a very much needed vacation. That's a thing that people talk about on podcasts, right, Chris, when they go on vacation?
Well, actually, they do.
Wow.
And their audience is there's this person who I'm a fan of, who I won't say who it is, because even though he's pretty neutral, he still gets political. So I just don't want anyone to know where I stand on anything in that realm. But he just got back from vacation, and it was really interesting to hear him talk about it.
Yeah,
especially considering vacation during Corona. So, Dom,
right?
Why don't you tell us how you were safe?
I'm not going to go. Okay, first of all, I know how you're trying to bait me here, and I'm not going to fall for it because I'm not one of those people that needs to divulge his entire personal life for the internet to hear. I'll leave that a mystery. But all I'll say is I went to vacation to what I will call my resting place. It was great. I saw a lot of people. I drank a lot of alcohol, and I just enjoyed myself overall. The goal of these. I even stayed an extra day too, which was the best part. I was supposed to be back last night. I didn't come back until tonight, which is Monday for the time of this recording. That's all I'm going to say there. I had a great time. I really enjoyed myself. Saw some good people, and I got some much needed relaxation.
That's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
Glad to hear it. And we're glad to have you back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Chris, how was your weekend?
It's pretty good. I made some graphics for an upcoming show on our channel.
Nice.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Expect something in the next few weeks. I did a 4.5-hour watch along.
Yeah, you told me this kid just texted me throughout this whole thing, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I didn't know it was possible to have that long of a discussion about a Mission Impossible movie. I know those movies are long, but god damn.
Yeah, I made it a point not to speak much after hour 3, minute 45, because I knew my brain had gone to mush. But it was a good time, so I didn't want to leave.
That's good.
Flix was totally yo, back out whenever you want to back out. No one's keeping you here. But also, no one left because we all had a blast. Yeah. We just did not think it would go 4.5
hours. I thought our Inception watch along went on way too long.
Yeah.
And we were barely speaking for that one.
And I guess if you guys want to, for whatever reason, watch that. Go support Flix, but if you really feel the need to torture yourself for 4.5 hours,
okay. Back up there. First of all, I think you're already doing a disservice to David. His name is David, not Flix. And second of all, I think that
Flix on YouTube, man.
Yeah, this is true.
Gotta help the homie get his name out.
That's why you say his subscribe name after his real name, because they are still people first and foremost.
Who am I talking about, Dom?
David of Flix Talk.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
we've done our job.
That's how that goes. Yeah, and and I'm sure that you guys were a blast to watch, because again, you don't watch those videos for just boring people watching a movie. You watch them to hear their colorful dynamic and talking throughout. And I'm sure that it was exactly that.
And a little hint, nudge, nudge. Every single person on that panel was an absolute delight and pleasure to meet. And there's going to be a lot of new faces on our channel coming soon. So
there are
a great night,
including something to pay attention to this coming Friday, people. A watch along that I have been very waiting for a while. Oh, that's another story that goes back to our Duchess days. That watch along.
It is, Dom. What are we watching this Friday night here on the
channel? This Friday night, we are watching Watchmen, people. The 11th anniversary, quite not really. I don't know. We kind of left anniversaries behind when Shaun of the Dead came out. We will just to specify, because there are 3 different cuts of this movie, we will be watching the 3-hour-long director's cut, not the 3.5-hour-long ultimate cut, and certainly not the 2-hour, 45-minute-long theatrical cut. So that's the 3-hour-long director's cut. Make sure that for all of those who want to tune in and watch with us, make sure that is the cut that you guys are watching, because if you watch any of the other cuts, you'll either be there for way longer than you need to be, or just be very confused by the amount of scenes that we're talking about that are not in that cut. But
when are we going to be live? So
we are going to be live this coming Friday, so 2 days after this podcast goes up. So this podcast will be up on Wednesday the 5th. So that recording will be the following, the two days after that, Friday the 7th, August 7th at 9 p.m. sharp. It's going to be a fun time, people. It's going to be a lot of talking going on throughout that one, and rightfully so.
And we'll be joined by all new faces.
Yes,
AJ
indeed.
Reacts 2, Jaren Talks Movies, and the dudes over at Levels of the Geeks. And it's going to be a blast, man.
It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time, to say the least. I'm really looking forward to it.
Today, we're not talking about new faces.
Yeah, I was about to say, we actually did a lot of like pre-prep for that. I was actually impressed. I'm like, wow, that shows we're actually doing stuff. I'm kind of impressed. Usually just like us BSing back and forth. But no, today we've actually got another topic of conversation that is very near and dear to my heart. It's funny because when I saw the trailer for this thing that we're talking about today, I was like, wait, they're doing another one? I'm like, I already got the perfect version of this, animated version of this with Prime. Like, why do I need another one? And then I looked at it, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is something new. This is something different. So before we dive into our topic, Chris, I actually did want to ask you real quick, and this is kind of breaking through the barrier of how we usually do this, but I wanted to ask you, what's your personal history with the Transformers franchise as far as that goes? And that's another franchise I've got a very long and rich and interesting historical connection with.
Yeah, me as well. I watched every single episode of Beast Wars when I was a little kid as it aired, because I was like 5 and alert and understood what was going on there, and it was brilliant. I loved it. Rewatched it when I was in high school, still just as brilliant.
It holds up. That show holds up, let me tell you.
Let me see if I can show you. I actually, will it reach? I have an original Transformers box set VHS.
Yeah, I've seen that a couple times at your place. Yeah.
Right next to Star Wars, and I love those original cartoons so much. They're incredible. I went and saw my only drive-in movie was the first Transformers movie with Megan Fox.
That's your only drive-in movie?
That's my only drive-in movie. I thought it was an awful experience. The screen looked terrible. It was buggy and it was awful, and I never wanted to go again. But I have a lot of memories with the Transformers, and I used to play with the action figures when I was a wee little lad.
Oh, I was so pissed, dude.
I love the Transformers.
A couple of years ago, I was so sad because I finally got myself a collection. I've always been into the Transformers toys when I was a little kid. The problem is my brothers always got the cooler Transformers than I did, so I would always have to steal the Transformers. And so I finally got an awesome collection a couple of years ago, finally, to call my own. And then I had to sell them all in one summer just so that I could have money, and it sucked. A small piece of me
How much did you make?
Happened to do that.
Roughly,
roughly $200. I made a decent amount. They sold like crazy. Like if there is one thing that sells,
quality.
They are high quality stuff. So needless to say, I think that a lot of the fans of this franchise have had a very rocky back and forth relationship with it, just needless to say, because this is another franchise that we have been inundated with our pop culture. It kind of takes, I would say, like a kind of along the cult status, like I would say along your Ninja Turtles and your Power Rangers. It's not quite the same as like Pokemon and Bakugan, because it's funny because up until now, it never really broached into the anime territory. It was always strictly like American animation. But if there's one thing that I've learned, it's that when it comes to properties like this, like the love does not die over the years, especially now with the internet. It has only gotten stronger. And obviously it had a long history with cartoons throughout the 80s and 90s before it got the live action treatment with the first Michael Bay movie in 2007. That movie series went off and did its own thing, needless to say. But the cartoons were still going strong. You had after the Michael Bay movie, you had a short run on Cartoon Network with the series that was called Transformers Animated. And then shortly after that, you had another run for what is probably my favorite Transformers animated show, which is Transformers Prime on the Hub. If nobody on here has checked it out, you should absolutely check it out.
I've never heard of that.
It hits the perfect mix between kid-friendly, but also surprisingly mature. And it kind of has like a little bit of a Clone Wars feel to it, while also being able to dive really deep into the Transformers lore. It's really awesome. So,
what's the year on that show? I'm curious.
2010 to 2013 was when it ran. The Hub was kind of like that off-brand, like off-channel, like offshoot of Cartoon Network. But the problem is nobody watching any of the shows. I think that was what the My Little Pony reboot that everyone's obsessed with, weirdly enough, runs on. They had a G.I. Joe show that ran on there for a season. They had a couple good shows, but Transformers Prime to me, I was like, whoa, this is good. And it's so funny because Transformers is a franchise that even through all the muck that we've had to sit through, I've never stopped enjoying it, because it's one thing where I'm like, okay, it's just an inherently awesome idea. You know, these alien robots from a dying world that fought in this gigantic civil war that literally fractured their species in half now have to like come to Earth and fight. And the thing is that and continue the fight, and they can transform into like cars and trucks. Again, it's one of those ideas that to me works in like any different kind of a medium. Like you can make it just for kids, you can make it for adults, you know, it's really, but for the most part, it's always pretty much stayed as a kid franchise, even though, again, with all the problems that those Michael Bay movies have, and oh man, they have a lot of problems. At the very least, those movies kind of sort of showed that they could be for adults. I get it. That's putting it very, very mildly, because those movies are such a beast in and of itself. But it kind of, I feel like those movies kind of helped open the door and showed that there was more, again, punch me in the face for this quote, but showed that there was more to this franchise than meets the eye. Yeah, I went there. I don't care. I went there. So that brings us hopefully.
Hey, real quick, the Michael Bay films made money though, right?
They made a lot of fucking money. They made a lot of fucking money. Those movies made more money than they probably should have ever deserved to. Yeah. And
I'm gonna rewatch those for the podcast.
Yeah,
it's it out there on public record.
I've been looking. Look, all I know is that everyone's got their one guilty pleasure franchise. I still defend the Fast and the Furious, even though I understand why people don't like it. But the Transformers to me is the one I would officially say bad movie franchise that I will defend till the day I die. I'm like, look, that motherfucking first movie came out when I was 10 years old. It hit me at the perfect age. I saw it twice in theaters. I was like, I was suckered in with that franchise from minute one. But
I remember that's why I rewatched Beast Wars, because it came out when I was 14, freshman in high school. And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I liked the first movie.
That was the summer between 5th and 6th grade for me.
Yeah, I just hated my driving experience, but I liked the movie. It got me to go back and watch some Beast Wars.
Yeah.
So,
and so
that brings animated.
Yeah, that brings us into the topic of conversation. Like I said, we've had a long history with the Transformers franchise, people, and we haven't gotten a chance to talk about it on the show. So that brings us into this past weekend. Netflix did another thing that factors into their notorious fucking just content dropping. It's like, okay, here's this thing, watch it like 10 minutes and wait for the next thing later on. Netflix, I'm officially declaring war on you until you start to give me actually some good goddamn content that actually lasts for longer than a minute in people's minds. Then this war will be over. But until that day, but so this is the latest piece of content that they dropped. It's Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy Chapter 1 Siege. There are like 17 words in this title, and it makes it really confusing. But so, Chris, just to give you guys a little bit of a backstory, because I was just confused. I remember seeing this trailer come out a couple weeks ago, and I was really confused. I'm like, they're doing another one? I mean, cool. Netflix is doing an animated Transformers show. I'm down for it. The animation looks awesome. I didn't recognize any of the voiceover talent. I'm like, okay, so they're really going for like a new, fresh approach. Like, because usually Transformers is a franchise that's been known for recycling a lot of the voice actors. Like Peter Cullen, obviously famously known for portraying Optimus Prime in the original Transformers G1 series in the 80s, came back to voice him for all the movies and a lot of the other current material. Like he also voiced him in the Prime series, kind of like made him iconic. But so, as far as I know, I do know that. So there was this. You're familiar with Machinima, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Machinima, the YouTube company, they were releasing a lot of Transformers shorts, like these 1 to 2 minute shorts on YouTube that were part of this that were part of this franchise called the Prime Wars trilogy. But so Machinima closed in February of 2019. And then after that, Hasbro's production studio, Hasbro being the toy company that makes them, their production studio, AllSpark, announced that they were teaming up with Netflix in order to craft a War for Cybertron trilogy that would be loosely based on the popular video game franchise, although not necessarily. And so they said that they would be releasing it in increments. And this past weekend, they released the first chapter, that being the first 6 episodes, however you want to declare it, which was called Siege, which details a new alternative history on the last couple days of the War for Cybertron as the Autobots are fighting a very, very losing battle, and discovered that Megatron has now discovered the location of the AllSpark, and of course events play out that they have to reactivate the Ark and escape from Cybertron and the space bridge and a whole lot of stuff. It's very basic. If you're a fan of Transformers, you're gonna recognize a lot of the stuff that happens. But yeah, that just as the basic setup, Chris. I mean, you watched it, I watched it. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, before I jump into my thoughts, Machinima is I have a little funny history with Machinima. I loved Halo. I think that the storytelling in that video game is unrivaled. It's probably my favorite video game series of all time. And so they did a YouTube short series that actually got them going and got them started, called Red vs. Blue, which is like a little one of the first YouTube like overdubbing like type of shows. And so it's so funny to see how like that gave them their wings, and then they went on and they partnered with, like, I think Rooster Teeth was a part of this
Yeah, they did.
animation that we watched. And I think Rooster Teeth is a very underrated visual.
Yeah, I gotta check and see what they've done before, but if their work is anything like this, I'm like, oh man, I want more of that.
I've seen them before, and I've been impressed. So once I saw that, I was like, okay, we're in good hands, you know. So that's kind of what I associated with. And while we're speaking about video games, last little bit, I played a lot of Transformers video games when I was a little kid.
I haven't got a chance to play any, but every single one that I've heard, like that War for Cybertron video game, I'm like, oh, that looks awesome. I've watched all the movies that they've done that they put out on YouTube. I'm like, oh, this shit is fucking awesome.
It was a good game. So yeah, I read a comic run of Transformers that was essentially what we watched.
Okay.
The only caveat, and I'm trying to look it up and find out what it was. This was years ago. I couldn't find out what the comic was. So I'll retcon this at a later date when we do our Transformers Michael Bay episode. I'll be like, hey, remember that, guys? I didn't know. So I'll get back to you on that. But the only caveat was that Bumblebee wasn't even in the comic.
Okay.
So that was a new element to me, but I like being on Cybertron. I think the part where Transformers get annoying to me is when they have to tiptoe around the humans.
Right.
I just think
that's when a lot of the dumb comedy that people don't like comes in.
And it makes them just less badass.
Yeah,
because
I
they
agree.
Are like so worried about, like, you know,
it factors into the whole element to me of what like made the Transformers less interesting is the idea of, because you had to have them inherently be this kid's property, you would have to have them come to Earth, and you had to have them interact with the human characters, and the human characters were always terrible. You know, I think the only time that I watched a Transformers property where I actually liked the human characters was, ironically enough, in Transformers Prime, but that's a discussion for a later date. And it's funny because the whole thing is that, like, that's one of the biggest problems with the Michael Bay movies, is that, like, for a franchise called Transformers, why are they background players? But that's not an issue that's exclusive to the Michael Bay movies. That's been a problem for me with Transformers since time of memoriam. And the thing that I like about some of the new creators is that they are understanding that problem and are getting back to the root of it and showing just the Transformers. And this, to me, was the first mainstream series that I've ever seen that just does that. That's like, okay, we're finally focusing it, and we're making the Transformers the main goddamn characters. No humans, nothing. Like, we're on Cybertron. It's wartime. There's no fun or jokes. It is miserable. It is gory. They are fucking losing. Like, they are depressed. I'm like, yes, this is the thing for Transformers that I have been waiting for years. Like, this is the logical next mature step. You know?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why I liked Beast Wars so much.
Right, because Beast Wars is the only show that I saw that didn't have humans in it.
Exactly.
And it was awesome.
Exactly, because I always like when the Transformers are at their most human, which in my opinion, when you're at your most human, you're literally just fighting to survive in these kind of stories, and you're not tiptoeing around certain things. Now, I'm very nervous. I don't want to get into too spoiler territory. I'm very nervous, though, that humans are going to come into the picture.
Yeah, that's the problem. I just did some research and I did find out. But here's the thing is that I found out for later on down the line, though, and I don't know if you want to know this yet, they do actually, from what I just read, I actually found out that there might be some very interesting plot developments that happen in the third chapter of this, because this was Arc 1 Siege. Yeah, this is Arc 1 Siege, which obviously is the beginnings of the conflict and their escape from Cybertron. Then Arc 2 is going to be called Earthrise, which is when they officially leave Cybertron looking for the Allspark, and that leads them to landing on Earth. But then in Arc 3, which is going to be called Kingdom, there's apparently going to be a freak time travel accident during their voyage home to Cybertron, where they join forces with the Maximals and the Predacons at some point in the future, which, bro, all I know is that I wanted to see Dinobots and Maximals and Predacons. I'm like, dude, all the nerdgasm is coming out right now.
You know what?
Like,
I'm okay with that, because I thought it would have been too good to be true if like they tried to make you think, oh, the portal didn't work, they're just back on Cybertron. I was like, that would have been a little too creative. Yeah. Because here's the thing. I don't think that this plot is at all challenging.
No, not at all. But they make that clear from the get-go, though, which is why you don't get annoyed by it. At least I wasn't.
You don't. If anything, I'm like, you know what? This is just,
it's refreshing. Sometimes basic storytelling is okay, and it just made it really refreshing. Yeah, it's really in depth. Like, I was honestly, like, when this started, and like it's funny because the other thing that I like about this show too so far from what I've seen is that it's still pulling beats from other Transformers properties, but it's playing it out in a new, different way. Like, the opening sequence with Bee and Wheeljack together is like almost beat for beat the opening sequence from the first episode of the original G1 series. Like, it's Wheeljack and Bumblebee going out looking for Energon before they rendezvous with the rest of the bots at the at the Ark. oh my God, I'm getting my Transformers mythology. There's so much different things that are mixed in here. But then Megatron and the other Decepticons show up, and automatically, like, I'm already in. I'm like, wait a minute, this is a totally different form of Megatron than we've gotten before, you know? And then Optimus shows up, and Optimus is kicking ass. But even Optimus, I'm like, this is not like the proud, noble warrior that we've come to know. This is a desperate kind of ragged Optimus, you know? And then you go back, and they all go back to the Ark, and you see the lines of like broken down Transformers, and Red Alert is working on them. And first of all, thank God we finally actually start to get into some of the other Transformers and start to get to know them. Like, you see all the G1 bots that you knew and then got completely bastardized in the Michael Bay movies. Like, to me, still the only bots that I actually remembered besides Optimus and Bumblebee because of those Michael Bay movies, because that was my introduction to Transformers, were Ratchet, Ironhide, and Jazz. But now we're finally getting to know all the other Autobots. Like, we finally get to know Red Alert. We finally get to know Alita 1, who for the most part was like never seen in any other things. We get to see Chromia, Mirage, Sideswipe, Prowl, all those guys, and so on the Decepticon side too.
Shockwave,
yeah, for the Decepticons, for the Decepticon side too. Besides Starscream, like Shockwave, Soundwave, Jetfire too, which that factors into its whole thing. Thundercracker, and again, the Decepticons have always had like less title characters and more like drone figures because, you know, they're the bad guys, and that's kind of a thing that Transformers pulled from Star Wars, where it's like, okay, we don't want kids to like know as many of the bad guys because we don't want them to care about them when they die, but.
So let me ask you this real quick. You just said your first introduction to Transformers was Michael Bay's?
The Michael Bay movies, yeah. I never watched any of the cartoons before that. Yeah.
So those VHSs that I just pointed to, that was my first introduction. So when I saw characters like Shockwave and Red Alert and Jetfire, to name a few, who I thought had been wiped off the face of the canonical Earth, I was just like, and they kind of look like the old cartoons.
They do. They totally take the G1 designs and make it like a new modern day. And it's funny because I always thought those G1 designs, compared to some of the future designs that they did, were so impractical because they were so bulky and it didn't look at all like accurate, like how they would transform and everything. I feel like I'm looking at building blocks assembled together back and forth. But for how they did it here, like how they animate, how they took that and like kind of gave it like this almost like retro, like neon 80s look. Again, like that seems to be the vibe now. That seems to be Netflix's go-to thing. So
listen, we've talked a lot about bad nostalgia on this podcast.
Yes, we have.
I think this is a prime example.
Me too. We're still going with these puns. We're still going with them.
Hey, we have to. But listen, the one thing I want to say, the impracticality that I've always loved, even when I was a little kid, I was like, what is this? And my dad's like, oh, that's a cassette. We don't have those anymore.
Oh, yeah.
That's so funny. What's that guy's name again? Is that Shockwave or who is that?
That's Soundwave. That's Soundwave.
Yeah,
that's Soundwave. Very confusing because they sound very similar. But
so I mean, I guess like, okay, hats off. My nostalgia blinders are on during this podcast, but I will still be objective about it.
Right.
But I just want everyone to know, and then Dom, take the reins after I say this, and let's really dive in now to the meat and potatoes of this. But I was very much so okay with the simple cut and dry storytelling because of how well done all the different
everything else
of filmmaking.
No, I agree with you 100%.
You know what I mean?
100%. Because again, like this is everything to me that I have been waiting for a Transformers property since I started watching them. Like again, the Michael Bay movies, say what you will about them. Like there is something in there. I think it's just those movies are vastly held back by the fact that Michael Bay, it's a franchise that ultimately Michael Bay just does not give a crap about, but it was a giant multi-billion-dollar franchise that they just let him do whatever with. And people wondered why they got what they got. But with this, like the whole idea to me is that I've always felt like Transformers is such a missed opportunity, and this to me was finally getting to something because again, factoring into the Netflix thing and how Netflix specializes in niches, and Netflix allows for a lot of crazy stuff that would never be accepted and never be given the green light by a majority of the big production studios, and they give this stuff the green light. Again, I hate you, Netflix, for constantly making everything so expendable, for making content like garbage, but at the very least, whenever you get a fucking gold mine, God damn it, do you hit it? Like, look, you're even making me reconsider watching the goddamn Umbrella Academy. Like, that should tell you something.
So am I.
But, yeah, like, I there's not really much that I can say about this. Like, everything that I was just seeing in this, I'm like, yes. And it was so short, too. Like, it's not something that you have to, like, dedicate an entire, like, 8 hours to in order to watch. Each 6 episodes. Each episode is, like, 20 minutes long. I got this over with in a day. And I was like, and I don't feel overwhelmed. I don't feel like I need to take a break. This was perfect, you know? Like, I felt like I was getting a little mini movie with each episode. And I'm like, for once, like, that actually seemed to demonstrate. And the thing that I like, too, is just taking aside the format, taking aside the characterization, just taking aside the animation, taking aside everything else, like the characterization of these guys was awesome. Like, I loved how mature each of these characters felt. I love how three-dimensional each of these characters were. You just take the characters of Optimus Prime and Megatron, who they've done a lot with in previous years, specifically Transformers Prime, with the relationship between those two and Prime, up until I saw this show, to me, was the best that I'd seen with the relationship between those two, because those two had always had a relationship that went back long before the actual conflict between the Autobots and the Decepticons happened.
Yeah.
And this really tackled and got into that, like the way that they talked about them. And really, the thing that I liked about it too was that it finally took what, for the most part, was a very black and white conflict, for the longest part, because it was a kid's franchise. Autobots good, Decepticons bad. It's even in their names. But fucking now they finally made them, like, they've made the conflict gray, which is awesome. Like, they showed that, like, okay, the Autobots are kind of fighting a losing battle, even when they have the opportunity to maybe not do so. And the Decepticons, they might not be as evil as everyone says, but they're still willing to do some shady shit. And it shows kind of like how it's almost like this alternative version of what we've come to know and expect, but it's almost like how they're going to, like, eventually build up to the Autobots and the Decepticons that we know, like Megatron starting this show, like, is not like the bloodthirsty, like, fucking cold leader that we know, but, like, he also will get shit done, and he also doesn't fuck around, and he shows that he is indeed evil.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and I want to elaborate on that more. What I really love is how they even when it's a small, tiny bit of exposition drop, it's just very important.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is they kind of like, and I didn't really get this in past Transformers properties. I didn't even really know this. And if it was in the comics, then that wasn't a big part of it. It didn't stick in my memory. I love the background story between Prime and Megatron, and sort of how, like,
it's good stuff. Especially once you get to know, like, Cybertron, especially once you get to know Cybertron's social structure, which has only really been hinted at. But, like, from the way they make it sound, it's like, yeah, like, these two, like, they were, like, closer than brothers, with how they, with their backgrounds, where they came from and everything.
Exactly. And just like that whole, they served together, they were military, and that was interesting, and I had never really realized that. And so there was also one scene too later on, I think it was in the 5th episode, where one of the characters is like, oh, you were I think it was like an engineer, a police officer or something.
Yeah.
And he's talking about being on another world, and they hint at, because there's 6 worlds.
Yeah. All the Transformers, like, they mentioned Contraxia, which was a thing I hadn't heard since the Transformers. What's the one with the combiner bots? Transformers Cybertron. You remember that trilogy, Armada, Energon, and Cybertron? That was when they started to dip into anime. That was the first time they started to dip into anime in the 90s. And it was 3 separate series. It was Armada and Energon, which were very, very anime-esque. And then Cybertron, which was a little bit less. Cybertron was the first time that they were messing around with, like, CG in animation. And that one, they actually went to all the different worlds, because they were trying to find this thing called the power keys that would light up the world engine and create giant transform. It was whatever. But they went around to, like, all these different planets, and a couple of, like, Contraxia, Velocitron, which was a thing that I heard in that. And I was like, oh shit, they're really embracing this.
Exactly. And they even, like, touch base on the Guardians and the zombie Transformers, and they did such a good job of, cool, here's the exposition dump, but you don't realize it because it's only what you need.
Yes.
And it's interesting when you get it.
Yes.
It enhances the scene. It enhances the story. Like, this miniseries is, I think, at least the first part, right? We haven't seen the other 2.
Right.
I think this is a very good example of, like, time management and animation.
Yeah, I agree.
Every single still had a purpose, in my opinion.
And the animation, like, just taking aside the animation, the artistry, the backdrop is gorgeous.
I
like,
loved
oh
it. Dude,
man, I loved it.
The score, I thought the score was
dope.
The animation,
that was dope.
It was futuristic. It felt like you were on a robot planet. It was subtle when it needed to be, but it took over the moment when you were just like, oh shit, like, he might be dead. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I gotta say, man, my favorite character, I think, was Jetfire, because
me too, really, for this version.
He showed, like, first off, I think every character did a great job of sort of showing, like, okay, this is war, and you have to pick a side even if you don't want to, aka Bumblebee.
Right.
But Jetfire sort of showed that, like, hey man, there's a spark in there, you know?
Literally.
And it can change, and they can grow, and they don't have to be committed to one side, because war changes anything, living,
Right, and
human,
I'll tell you what else that I love too, just about that dynamic in general, is that obviously the whole long running Transformers tradition is that, like, and again, like, it's kind of, it's been going on so long that it's almost become a meme at this point. Is that, you know, Starscream is Megatron's second in command, but you always wonder, like, why does Megatron trust this guy? This guy tries to stab him in the back every chance that he literally gets, you know. But with this version, I like that they started with Jetfire as the second in command, because Jetfire almost acted like Megatron's conscious throughout this whole thing. Like, you could still tell that, like, he was, up until the very end, he was like, Megatron, you don't want to do this, you know, we're trying to preserve our species, we're not trying to wipe them out, you know, we're trying to beat them, you know. And I loved, like, that little distinction, like, just that little bit right there, like, just showing how bloodthirsty Starscream was in comparison to Jetfire, and like what two sides, like, it really did show that, like, you know, a leader was only as good as his army that's following him, you know. And that was true on both sides, you know, because it was the same thing for the Autobots, because every second you saw Elita 1 was constantly calling out Optimus and questioning him, partly because she was really the only one that could do it, but also because of that, like, their connection that they had, but also because, like, she legitimately, they thought that he was going to lead them towards, like, extinction, you know.
I agree 100%. I mean, I think I hope that Starscream has his change of heart like he always does, and sort of comes over, because I love when that happens. I remember being a little kid and be like, "Oh shit, he's a good guy now. That's so cool."
It's like 50-50 with Starscream when that happens.
We'll see what happens with that. I hope he does, because I feel like he's just going to get betrayed by Megatron, but not to fan fiction too much. I do want to say, though, while we're speaking about the character specifically, there is one character for me that just didn't work, and it was very unfortunate. Do you want to guess who that is? Or
no, I actually don't. I just want you to tell me.
Optimus Prime, man.
Really? Okay, that's interesting that you say that, because... Yeah. Well, I want to hear your thoughts, because I don't want to do that thing where I'm like, I say, like, I want to hear your thoughts first. I want to see if they line up with mine, because it's very interesting that you bring that up.
Okay, yeah, don't spoil it. I don't know where you stand on this.
I won't say anything. I want to hear your thoughts first.
I didn't think it was terrible. I thought the voice acting was good. Like, I thought the voice matched the character, so that wasn't my issue. My issue was the way he was written. I felt he was a little too passive and a little too reliant on everyone else around him. He wasn't the Optimus Prime that was, even when he knew that everything was going to go south and that the Guardians weren't going to help them and they were absolutely fucked, he would pretend that he knew what was going on. Yeah. He wasn't the strong leader that I think the plot deserved, to be honest with you. Yeah. And I think Elita was very strong, but I mean,
Elita to me was almost like a better, more decisive leader than he was at points. It was kind of funny how that worked.
That's cool. But the second in command, I think, should never be as strong as
stronger, more overpowering.
Because, like, they're making it seem like Optimus is, like, saying the right things, but the way he's saying it, there's just no heart in it.
And I'm actually, it does. I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because, again, like, I'll get to the Man of Steel argument in a little bit, but, like, the whole thing that I was watching, like, when Optimus bursts into the scene, I'm like, yeah, and then starts talking, like, how he's talking with Megatron, I'm like, wait, something's not right here. What's going on? And then as we're going on, and, like, as we're seeing him, I'm like, he almost feels cold. He feels distant. Like, it's definitely a little bit of, like, a readjustment, seeing that, like they make it very clear, okay, this is not the Optimus Prime that you know. Like, this, again, this is a war-torn, this is a mistrustful, this is a tired-out Optimus Prime, you know? He's kind of at the end of his rope. Obviously he's the leader, so he has to put on the brave face that they are fighting a noble and just cause. But even he knows that they're starting to get down to the wire, and they're losing people left and right. There's not enough energon left. They're running on fumes right now. So as far as that sense, that's kind of like how I was able to excuse some of his behavior. But at the same time, you're right. Like, it definitely, there were points where it's like, dude, you're the leader. Come on, like, get your shit together, you know? But the thing that I'm going to bring it back to is the Man of Steel argument, which, again, is, to me, why I keep excusing that movie, which is that I'm like, okay, so this isn't quite the character that we know, but this is the origin that will lead to the character that we've come to know, you know, if anything. Like, because the thing that I always loved about Optimus Prime's origin is that Optimus Prime, for the most part, has, like, one of the most humble origins of all. Like, before the whole Cybertronian conflict, you know, Transformers' lifespans are much different than human lifespans. They live a lot longer. Like, Optimus Prime and Megatron have both been alive for, like, thousands of years. But the thing that I enjoy so much about it is that Optimus Prime starts off as, like, a clerk. And the whole thing is that, like, Megatron was started off as a slave and a fighter in the gladiatorial arenas of Kaon, and kind of, like, how those two were able to, like, kind of form their relationship as a result of, like, they both wanted better for Cybertron, but because of where they came from, it's literally Professor X and Magneto right there, which is that, like, one only knew peace and privilege, and one only knew misery and fighting to survive, and that despite the fact that they have common goals, but ultimately lead them to separate. And that's exactly what happened here, you know? And that's kind of what I always liked. And again, it's why, again, it sucks, but it's why Optimus was always going to be the one that got the matrix of leadership and not Megatron. But the thing that I liked about this, and kind of what got me past it, is that I'm like, okay, this is still an Optimus Prime who got the Matrix, but doesn't still necessarily know how to use it. He's kind of been forced into this position because Megatron killed Alpha Trion and kind of threw their whole rebellion into Crux, and now he's kind of been like forced to become the leader. It's almost like the reluctant leader Optimus Prime, which we haven't seen at all, I think. I don't think there's been a single time where we've really seen Optimus Prime as the reluctant leader. They tap into that a little bit in Prime, but for the most part, he's still like way past, and he's still like the Optimus Prime that we know and love, you know? And that's the thing that I kind of like about this, you know, even if it's not even if it does make for kind of one of the weaker characterizations of that, you know, is that this is still an Optimus Prime who's learning how to be a leader. And as a result, he's not going to always make the best decisions, and he's not always going to be the most like kind of heroic and just, but he still does have that moral, those moral codes that we know, you know?
Yeah. See, I say all this about him, but I don't think it made the series any less.
Oh, not
awesome.
at all. I just
think it was, and I think it's because literally every other character is just so much more in depth. Optimus Prime almost felt, but he wasn't a plot device. He almost felt like a bit of a plot device, unfortunately, but he wasn't, because he had depth too. It just, for some reason, it just, you know, maybe it's because I didn't get an Autobots rollout. Maybe
right,
it's,
but here's the thing, again,
that,
different type of a show. Although I thought there was one point where he did say it. I may have missed it, but I thought that there was one point where they were driving toward, in like the 5th or 6th episode, where they were driving towards the space bridge with Hound, and I thought he said it. But
no, I was listening to it.
Okay,
he didn't say it. It was very unfortunate. But yeah, so like, I guess to further elaborate on that whole argument, it just, I was just waiting for the one central Autobot to emerge, and it never happened.
Right.
In a sense, it kind of really felt like this show was more about Jetfire or the Decepticons in a weird way.
Thing. Yeah, exactly. Which is insane, because we've never seen that from a Transformers show before. Which again is no, I do 100%. Yeah. I think we spent more time with the Decepticons than we did the Autobots. Like the Autobots almost felt like the secondary characters here, which again is insane to me. And the fact that there's a production studio that would go there is kind of awesome to me. You know, like I said, again, the example that I keep going to is Prime, because Prime to me is the only Prime and Beast Wars, I would say, those are the only times, because I didn't watch the original series, where we actually got to spend as much time with the bad guys as we did with the good guys, and we got to know them, and they almost kind of became like really these interesting characters in and of themselves, you know? So, but for them to take that route and really give us this very, very human side to Megatron and all the Decepticons, like it almost made it like it makes it this like a very worthwhile contribution to the show overall and to the overall canon of Transformers.
Yeah, no, just so you know, the original show was very much so your typical 90s, late 80s,
early 90s. Yeah.
Did not see the villains
like that
too much except for when they were about to fight. So
and whenever they would fight, the villains were catchphrases, and that was it.
And that's why I guess I can't say I didn't like Optimus Prime. That's why I say I was just thrown off by him.
Right.
Which, I don't know. I just, you know.
Because it almost felt like they were humanizing Megatron almost to a fault. And then when he went full on evil, it kind of felt weird, because it felt like they weren't giving Prime enough of a justification. And it felt like also, I definitely do think that, and this might have been a writing thing, but I definitely think that like there were certain points where he was just being silent, and I'm like, no, you should be talking more. You know, you should be given more explanations. You know, like I said, it's not a perfect characterization, but I understand at the very least the choice that they made.
Yeah, it's definitely not a perfect characterization. I think that Alita was kind of saying things along the lines of like, Prime, we definitely need to do this because of that,
Prime,
yada yada.
Get your shit together. We are losing, and we are going to die.
But she would say the good idea, and he'd be like, yeah, we should do that. It felt more like that. But here's the thing. I think that this is going to be and go down as a really, really good little niche series. So I kind of think that like we haven't really gotten the Prime that we know and love yet, but I think he's coming, and I think when he comes, it's going to
be awesome.
Our socks
it's going to be fucking awesome. I can't wait. I cannot wait.
I feel like they want us to say this right now. Anyone who's covering this, they want us to say this about Prime, because they know they're like,
and that's the thing, I have seen barely anybody cover it. Like seriously, people, you're on Netflix all the time looking for stuff to watch. Watch this fucking show. It is unbelievable.
just to throw it back to earlier in the episode, David actually of Flix Talk covered it, and he asked a really good question in his review that he did not know the answer to. And Dom, I don't know the answer to save the life of me.
Okay.
Did the Transformers always have mouths, or was this new? They had human mouths.
Oh, no, they've had it before. They've had it before. Yeah, they've had it before. Yeah. The whole thing is that Optimus, for the longest time, always had that gasket plate over his mouth that acted as his mouth. But, because they have face masks in a lot of different iterations. But no, there have been other versions where they've had mouths. They all have, for the most part, they all have human mouths in the live action movies. They have mouths in the Beast Wars show. They have mouths in Prime. They do. It's different for each Transformer because each Transformer is anatomically different. Like, they're not all the same. But, they do have mouths.
So, Dom, you're a huge animation guy, I'd rather say. Why don't we sort of talk about the visual aesthetic? Because I also think that this anime inspired, I would not call this
I would say this another anime inspired. Like, it's funny because it's not using direct anime techniques the way that something like Avatar or Teen Titans did. Like, those two shows, like, it was very present in that they were using a very anime influenced style, like to the point where they would like have like the I don't even know what to call it.
There was
you know what I'm talking about. But the thing that I liked about this is that you could see the anime influence, but it never became distracting. Like, they never did like a totally anime thing. And that was probably because of the CG. So the CG obviously provided a lot of limitations that like you couldn't get away with in a CG medium that you could in a hand-drawn animation medium. Is that those two mediums, like CG is like the bridge between hand-drawn and live action. So like it's almost quite to the point of getting to live action, but it's not quite there. So it's like that uncanny valleyness of it in our brains. But CG has only gotten better, and the uncanny valleyness of it like has slowly gone away. I mean, you're a video game guy. You can tell me, like, you played countless video games that are like they're almost lifelike at this point. Like, like I know The Last of Us, like
emotional. Like I felt the emotion as if someone was in an Optimus Prime cosplay suit.
Right.
It was
very
real.
It was insane. Like, and that I think really does contribute a lot to the show also, because it makes these characters, these robot characters, feel even more human, arguably more human than they've ever felt before. And also, again, it adds so much rich texture to the world. Like, I was so fascinated by every single frame of this, and that's why I always hate why animation gets so heavily discounted, because so much of film is a visual medium, and animation, for the most part, is all visuals. There's no actual there's no in-person performances, there's no flashy set design, there's no fancy camera tricks, none of that. It is all hand-drawn or designed in a computer, and it is entirely visual aesthetic, and it's literally moving art. It is literally the idea of cinema, the moving image. So and the fact that they're constantly able to up that with like each new thing, like animation will forever keep me fascinated no matter how old I get.
Dom, dude, you are just dropping the hammer tonight, man. I couldn't agree more with any of that.
Dude, you're getting animation mixed with Transformers, two of my favorite things ever. You knew you were going to get it.
Let me elaborate on that, because you kind of just sparked my memory and made me realize the way I was feeling while I was watching it. So you brought up the life that the animation brought to the script, to just everything we were watching.
Right.
And
which you said was, for the most part, a very basic, bare bones, cut and dry story.
I still stand by that.
Yeah, me too.
But it just was, it made it seem not the case. And you got to think about this, man. Cybertron is a living thing in this world.
It's a living, breathing being. Like, like, depending on your source for Transformers lore, it is a Transformer itself.
It is. And so for me, like, watching the cityscapes, which I thought were brilliant and awesome, like being all destroyed and burned down, I mean, that was like watching something in pain, something writhing in pain. So I think they did such a good job making every single character feel so alive, have so much emotion, that's why I think Optimus just, like, he didn't have to carry the weight on his shoulders this time. Like,
it finally wasn't the Optimus Prime show. You actually got to know the rest of the Autobots, which, again, I feel like that's always been a crutch that they leaned on, is the fact of, like, okay, there's so many Autobots that for every show we can only do, like, a certain amount, like a small group. That way you let, like, people won't get confused by this. But I like that for once, this was a show that said, no, we don't have to worry about the fact that our audience is going to not know who all these characters are and not be able to keep track of or follow them. We know that we know our niche, and we know that a majority of these people are, for the most part, familiar with Transformers because there's been enough property and there's been enough time. So yeah, let's just go at it. And they did it, and it was awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And to that point, I mean, I just think I can't wait to see how these guys animate Earth. And thinking about all of this as a whole, man, I mean, this might be the best Transformers I've ever seen since Beast Wars, because Beast Wars also had that very CG animation. Granted, it was very early on,
but it still worked. Like,
but I
even
remember
some of the,
being emotionally invested in the characters
yeah,
more than that classic original cartoon run, which
way
I'm not
more.
putting
Oh my
down
god.
by any chance. But that original cartoon run that I got the VHSs of right there, I mean, dude, I feel this 10 times more. And I'm
Yeah,
older now. I'm not the little kid being targeted by this anymore.
right.
You know, it's
Yeah,
really
but
blowing
again,
my
that's what
mind
you
talking
said about
about this.
Netflix's need. Netflix, we seem to be the target audience for Netflix, and it works for them. You know?
And this might be a good example to throw it back to our Netflix talk of
Yeah.
like, this is a good example of
Right.
Netflix just like finding a niche.
Yes,
And
I was
you
joking
know,
before, but yeah, no, this is the
yeah.
stuff. When I say that Netflix specializes in niche programming, this is the type of niches that I think they do well. You know, I understand fully that like not everything they're going to do is going to be for me, but as far as investing in a niche that they know will work and then putting all this crazy effort into it and actually like taking a risk and making something that we think we're familiar with really new and interesting, that's the sort of stuff that I wish they would do, and that's the sort of stuff that I honestly wish every movie studio would do. You know, because filmmaking is supposed to be about taking risks and doing more crazy, interesting stuff with storytelling. And it always baffles me why these studios that have all these billions of dollars are not going to invest in something new.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think I'm just glad that we got this, because this to me, I'm about to go read a Transformers comic. Like, this had the same effect on me as it did when I watched The Boys, and I was like, I got to go find this original graphic novel and read this shit right now. Like, this had an impact on me, man. Netflix did it. They did us a solid for all
Yeah,
this.
they really did.
For
They
all
really did.
the schlock we get, all the terrible nonsense that they give us. I mean, Space Force.
The
You know what I'm
Old
saying?
Guard.
Like,
Oh my
I
god.
haven't seen that. That was
Don't.
terrible.
Don't. Waste of time.
Okay, I'm not gonna
Waste the
watch it.
goddamn time.
It will not be in my top 10 movies list, everyone.
No,
I'm not gonna
not
watch
my.
it.
It might make my top 10 worse. Let me tell you that much.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, dude. I mean, I just think I'm looking forward to the future. Do we
Me
know
too.
when the? Do we know?
No
when-
idea. I have no idea. And honestly, I kind of don't want to know because I want to kind of forget about it. And then, like, once it comes back, I'll be like, oh, yeah, I can't wait. Yes.
Do you have any real negatives for this, or? I mean, I feel like I said what I had to say about Prime, but
not really. I guess certain. I see. Even that's not really a criticism because I don't think that it's like that exposition-y. Like you said, the exposition is handled perfectly. Like, if any, okay, you know what? I do have one little nitpick. If anything, I wished we could have gotten more names of people because, again, I'm not as familiar. I'll admit I didn't watch the G1 series, so I'm not as familiar with each of the minor characters that didn't pop up in some of the future properties. So I had to really do my homework and remember. I'm like, okay, that's Prowl. Okay, that's Sideswipe. Okay, that's Mirage. You know, all those guys. You know, because they popped all those characters popped up in different Transformers properties that I did watch, but they looked vastly different. So like I had no idea who was who. So in that sense, I was a little bit curious because the Decepticons, I for the most part recognize all of them from their old designs because the Decepticons didn't change too much as time went on, but the Autobots, they've changed a lot, you know, because they got to make them look like the flashiest, sexiest, new looking sports cars and everything, you know, like Mirage and Transformers Dark of the Moon they turned him into a freaking Ferrari with an Italian accent because that's how Michael Bay's brain works.
Wow.
I
cannot wait to watch these.
I don't even think they called him Mirage in the movie. I think they called him Dino, but that was supposed to be Mirage. And like, I'm talking about those movies way too much, but
I can't wait to watch those.
Oh my god, it's gonna be a trip, dude. It's gonna be a trip. But yeah, so that's probably it. But even that's a nitpick. Like, and if anything, like I said, the fact that they were a little bit catchphrasy, and I wish that like more of them had gotten characterization. Like I like what they did with Ratchet, where they didn't make him the main medic, where they made Red Alert the main medic, and then they made Ratchet kind of like this off-ground scavenger who like was trying to like not sit out the war and not be a part of it. And like what they did with Bumblebee was cool.
Yeah,
that was a different take that I hadn't seen before.
World building.
That was dope. That was dope. I'm like, yes, this shit we need more of. More of this, please.
Yeah, man. It just showed how this is wartime. These are desperate life forces. I don't know what you call them. Robots that are just trying to survive, but they don't want to get involved on either side because it's not their war. If they had their way, Cybertron would be the way it was before all this nonsense started, and that couldn't be any truer to any conflict in history. They nailed it. Yeah, they really nailed it. My only nitpick, because I think what I'm getting off of what you just said, and if I'm not speaking for you correctly, then just jump in and cut me off. But I feel like this show was so good that we both agree that we're just nitpicking because it was that good.
Yeah,
Like,
I'll fully admit to the nitpicking. Like I said, I'm like, okay,
you
sorry,
know?
I actually want to know which character's name is which. Sorry that I'm not a diehard Transformers fan, that I don't recognize them immediately from their old G1 design. But again, like, that's a nitpick.
But like,
Like, I'll be the first person to admit.
But if that's all you have to say for the negatives, then think about how good this really was, right? Because my only nitpick is we did not get an Autobots rollout. But honestly, that's not make or break.
I think we're gonna get it. I think we're gonna get it at some point. You know?
I hope it comes out in the third act. I hope they make me fucking wait for it.
Dude, all I know is that I've been waiting, but ever since that last season of Beast Wars, I've been waiting for a OG Transformers meets Beast Wars era Transformers. And if we're gonna get that, I say full steam ahead with the show. Now, Chris, before we get into our final thoughts, just wrap it up. I just have to prepare. I just have to allow you to know something, because I made a list right here of all the ridiculous shit that you're in for with these Michael Bay Transformers movies. And trust me, a lot of these things are going to sound fake, but I promise you, they all happen in these movies. So
let's hear it.
Jazz's introduction line in the first Transformers movies is, "What's cracking, little bitches? This looks like a cool place to kick it." That's his intro line. In Transformers 2, Revenge of the Fallen, there are two bots who are introduced named Mudflap and Skids, who are very clearly racial stereotypes, one of whom has a gold tooth and who both can't read. That is a thing that also happened.
Wow,
in Transformers Age of Extinction, there was this race called that created them, called the Creators, very original, that humans have started creating their own Transformers with a substance called Cybertronium. That's in the fourth one. In the fifth one, this is where we get really interesting. In the fifth one, it turns out that the Transformers were there helping King Arthur. That's right. They helped King Arthur, and apparently they interfered in human history so much, even though this was not at all a thing that happened in any other Transformers property, that apparently they Dude,
Stop.
They apparently helped.
You're just fucking with me.
They helped Thomas Edison design the light bulb. They apparently helped Harriet Tubman on the Underground Railroad.
No. This is so stupid.
They helped kill Hitler in World War II.
No.
Oh, and the coup de grace, the crowning grace of them all. Oh,
this is the dumbest shit I've ever. You're just fucking with me. There's no way that this is real.
I promise you, all of this actually happens.
Oh my God.
The crowning grace. The crowning grace is that. Oh, I forgot. In the same Transformers 2, the quality cinema.
I cannot believe
it. There's a mini Transformer. No, wait. There's more. Hold on. There's a mini Transformer that humps Megan Fox's leg for like 2 minutes straight. God. And they hold it on it. And then, oh God, this is the best part. This is the best. When they form Devastator, when the Constructicons form Devastator, and he's climbing up the pyramids, you get an undershot of John Turturro staring up directly at clanging brass balls. They gave a Transformer actual balls, dude.
What?
All of this shit happens in these movies. I promise you, I did not make a single thing up. All of those things happen in these movies. It's ridiculous. And I already told you about the Italian stereotype with the Ferrari that they turned Mirage into in Dark of the Moon. Have fun when you rewatch these movies, buddy. It's gonna be a ride.
Wow. So Michael Bay just told us how he really feels about everything. That is how is he still?
I wonder why I love him as a director, because nobody makes up the way he does, and nobody just blatantly does not give a fuck the way he does. Like,
once you said that the Transformers helped them kill Hitler, that is I can't. That is so.
And that was the most recent one. That was the most recent one.
So stupid. And these continue to make money.
They only made more money as time went on.
No.
Oh my God, dude! The fourth one was the highest grossing movie with the Dinobots. That was the highest grossing movie of 2014. It made over $1 billion. Dude, and you want to know how else Michael Bay doesn't give a shit? There are spots. There's a scene in the fourth one where fucking a guy is looking at a bunch of TV screens, and they're so lazy they couldn't even go in and key out some of the green from the green screens. There's spots of green in a video monitor.
They invented the light bulb. Yeah, this
is.
Usually I get upset.
I wish I was making this shit up. I wish I was making this shit up. I really do. But it's, oh man, oh God,
oh boy.
Well, you just set me down a memory. Like I said, you're in for a ride, buddy. You're in for a ride.
I'm hoping to have them done by the end of the year, so
we'll see.
Like
and they're long too. They only get longer. The first one is 2.5 hours long. By the time they get to the fourth one is almost 3 hours long. So Be ready.
Well,
be ready. I don't know what you have to do in order to sit through long movies, but be ready.
To put all of that in there, they gotta be long, right?
Dude, fucking, all I know is that Red Letter Media once did a watch along where they watch all three of the first three Transformers movies back to back, and it's one of the funniest videos I've ever seen. So if you get a chance, I would highly recommend go and watch that. There's like a Red Letter Media watch the Transformers movies.
I actually haven't watched them in a minute. I've been meaning to get back into them, so I will.
It's so funny. But back to the actually good Transformers show, before I actually highlighted just what us Transformers fans have had to sit through as far as live action goes. And now people understand why I both hate and love those movies.
Now that I've heard that, this show is, it's instantly, the stock has gone up.
Yeah.
Its stock is even higher than it already was.
Even higher than it already was.
But yeah, I mean, Dom, that sounds bonkers. I cannot wait for that conversation.
Bro, it's gonna be nuts. It's gonna be nuts. Like, I don't know. You might need like some help. Like, you might need some help after like these movies. There is shutting. To quote co-host from Double Toasted after he reviewed Dark of the Moon. The people who say check your brains at the door. No, those assholes check their brains at the minute they were given birth to.
Jeez, man, that is just, bro. I don't know if you're messing with me. I know you're not, but dude, I want to believe you are. Again,
like, oh man, oh man, you gotta talk to me after each one. But so wrapping up our thoughts on this show, Transformers War for Cybertron, Chapter 1 Siege, great debut outing, absolutely impeccable animation, great voiceover talent from again a bunch of like relatively like voiceover actors that I've never heard of. Like they're all new to the scene. Great introduction, great like kind of reaffirmation that the Transformers lore is still alive and well. And yeah, I loved it. I give it 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, I mean, listen, my only negatives were when I really put it under a fine microscope and combed through it, and all I could really find was that they didn't say Autobots roll out, and that's not really that negative. It was still incredible without it. In fact, this was so good that I'm gonna go and I'm gonna read some comics probably tonight. I'm gonna rewatch, we'll watch those terrible films. I'm gonna be back on my Transformers binge type stuff for the first time since I was in my 20s. I mean, I don't know the last time I had a Transformers binge. It's been a long time, but this has gotten me excited about Transformers again in a whole new light. It's a 4 out of 5 stars, and I cannot wait for the second and third part.
It's going to be a good ride, man.
It is.
So with all that being said, thank you people for once again tuning into another great episode of Talkin TV. We put out episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We took a little bit of a break this past week because, again, I was on a much needed vacation. But if you guys get a chance, go check out my Talkin TV awards that I put up on YouTube this past Friday. I had a lot of fun making that. Again, if anybody can actually deal with my silliness and giving out my awards that comprise of the set that I use for my background in my solo YouTube videos, then hopefully you guys will enjoy it.
Can I just say it's one of my favorite videos of yours? Because
come on, stop. No, it's not.
I love the comedy in it, man. Hearing you,
I'm literally just pulling shit off my shelf and being like, it's hilarious. I will give them this empty headphone box. Unfortunately, they don't have the headphones in them because, you know, I'm still using them, but
it was really funny. I thought it was really funny.
Awesome.
It has a good charm to it. I want to be a part of it next year. I want to make that like a big thing we do.
All right.
Talkin TVs.
Hopefully we have enough. Hopefully we have enough TV shows to do awards for.
Hopefully, yeah. I hope we have Barry season 2. I mean, season
Barry
right?
season whatever. Barry season 3, Succession season 3, Glow the final season. Like all those shows, they need to come back. They need to come back.
We're talking about a lot of things that we have on the horizon in the distant future. But we also have a lot of stuff in the near future, Dom. Why don't you?
Indeed. We have. Well, you have a certain video game show with a certain someone that shall not be mentioned coming up. I've got a couple reviews coming up this coming Friday, the same day that we're doing our Watchmen watch along. Will be when David Ayers, the tax collector, will be coming out. I'll be doing a review for that for Monday. And all I'm going to say is that I don't want to spoil any top 10s that I have coming up, but stay tuned. All I know is that we
have some appearances this week, though. Too,
yes, we do. Yes, we do. We are appearing this coming Thursday on a friend of ours, Joe, aka Guy at the Movies, my friendly neighborhood friend / nemesis / community nemesis. Will be appearing on his channel for a Fantastic Four. Fan Four Stick watch along. Oh God, I can't believe that movie. Can't believe that there's actually a movie that exists that make me look back at the Tim Story movies with reverence.
That's Thursday, August 6th.
Thursday, August 6th.
8:30 p.m.
Yep.
And we're also proud partners of the first ever Guy at the Film Festival.
Yeah. I was about to. You talk about that.
Yeah. So we're a part of a film festival, and it's going to be awesome. The director of Night Hunter is on it, which that's crazy. We're actually a part of something that the people who we critique are going to be there for. Yeah. Not necessarily that movie, but that is pretty nuts. And so many of our peers in this YouTube community that we've become good friends with, and also some people like Sean Chandler, who I'm sure you
Yeah.
and I would both love to be in that position.
Right.
I mean,
Oh my God. Like,
I'm just honored to be there. I'm
what?
sure you are too, right? Like,
how,
we're a small
how
fish
did
in a
we,
very big
how
pond.
did we pull this off? It's only like, how many months have we been doing YouTube now? Like what? Like 3, 4
5?
months? Something
Yeah,
like
4.
that? Like
Yeah.
since this quarantine started? Like,
I just gotta
shit.
say, I mean, I'm just very thankful that Joe thought of us, because obviously we are the smallest show on that, but I'm excited to be hosting a very big event, which we can't name yet.
Not yet, but it's people. All I know is that if you are a fan of video game movies, cult classics, and a certain 25th anniversary that's coming up soon, oh man, you guys are in for a treat.
I'm not saying we're gonna steal the show, but we just
But we're gonna do it. Come on, let's be honest. When do we not steal the show? And what thing are we on where we don't automatically steal the show just based on presence alone?
That is true. And then lastly, this Saturday night at 9 p.m., I'll be over on Elliot of Movie Files channel. See, I did it right that time, Dom.
You're getting
and
You're getting
and we're gonna be watching one of my favorite superhero films. I cannot wait to defend it.
We are just like on a train for crappy superhero movies.
We are.
Why? What is it that August has against me personally as far as superhero movies go? Like, both these movies should have been great, and they both sucked.
Yeah, I think it's just it's been a weird year. So we got to rewatch the bad stuff to realize how it's okay. Like, it was worse back then too. It's not all bad right now. I think that's why Elliot's putting me through a Suicide Squad watch along, but I'm happy to be there. I actually asked him to be on it, so pull the curtain back. It's going to be a good time. I can't wait. A couple cool people are on that panel as well, and dude, we have so many guest appearances in August.
We got a lot of guest appearances to look forward to. And of course, my birthday month, so
it is. Do you want to tell them about the birthday episode, or are we saving
that?
Oh,
no, we'll save that one. But yeah, all I know is I'm going to be 23 this year, and hopefully this podcast will actually show that I've done something meaningful with my life. That's all I'm going to say there.
Dude, we're a part of a film festival with someone who's directed a legitimate film and people who make money off YouTube. I think we're doing okay. We just got to keep working hard, and that all comes from you guys being here and giving us a reason to work hard.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Thanks I know we say it a lot, but exactly, Dom. But you can never say it enough. So, Dom, you take this one. I always say
thanks for being here, people. You guys are the best. Seriously. Thanks for constantly coming back and watching our stuff over and over and over again. It really does mean the world for us. So if you get a chance, please leave a comment in this video. Let us know how we can constantly improve. Let us know. Give us a countdown. I want to hear from you guys, a countdown clock for when we should get back in the studio, because that'll put a trigger, that'll light a fire under this guy's ass as far as getting the studio ready as fast as possible so that we can actually get back to it. Because I want to get back to in-person recording. I missed that shit. Click the subscribe button, click the little bell next to it, that way you get notified. And follow us on our socials too, Facebook and Instagram at Talkin TV or at Talkin TV Podcast, no G. And Chris, with that being said, can I do my thing?
Dom, take it away.
Watch more fucking movies, people. We out.